Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. For everyone that's new to the channel, we thank you for being here. And as you come in, always respect families, mods, and each other. What happened tonight, we'll have a short presentation. We'll have another little video that we're going to show. I've been doing some testing on some of the clothing. When I was looking at, I had several people, which I want to thank, have been sending me some of the crime scene photographs. And while looking at them, not only do you have blood pattern analysis, but you have to look at the total picture of what it is when you're looking at it. The clothing articles, what do they mean? What clothing articles are there? And I also have possibly of why there was a certain kit that was performed regarding any type of assault that might have happened with him. And I noticed why that might be while I was doing the studies of the clothing. And there were certain things about the mechanics that we're going to be looking at tonight, and I'll show them to you. We're going to be watching a short video, and as you watch that, of course, the pictures that have been sent to us, what there was some manipulation of the body during the taking of the photographs, because at one point the legs are shifted one direction, another photograph the legs are shifted the other direction, which is common. It's documented. So we don't have all the photographs of the crime scenes. Whatever these limited number of photos that we have, they're going to be hundreds and hundreds of photographs. Ever how these came to be, and are very limited, and within them, like I said, there was some movement of the body that was been done by law enforcement. And with that in mind, I also have to consider that some of the mechanics of some of the clothing articles, or especially the shirt that we're going to be looking at, that if there was any type of possible movement by law enforcement that would have created this certain fold that would have been indicative. And I don't know if it was law enforcement or if this part of the clothing was not manipulated, because there's certain acts it takes and mechanics of contact to create movement of clothing. And that's very important for the fact that if we can show that a person had hands on the body and the clothing of Stephen at any time at this scene where his body was recovered, that totally takes out any type of accident as far as vehicle, because we have physical contact from a human's hand of movement of the body and of his clothing. But with that in mind, regardless if law enforcement comes forth at some point and says, oh, we're the ones that moved this clothing in this manner, that will explain the mechanics of how this handling of the clothing could have occurred. Because when I saw it, I went and I said, I need to test and see how those folds could happen and what does it mean. And that's what I did today. And you'll get a clearer picture of this as we move forward. But anyway, if you want to start with that video.
All right, so you want me to remove us?
I'm going to turn off my cam. I'm going to leave my microphone going. Yes, go ahead. So I created a dummy. This dummy has weight in it, and so that I put a striped shirt on it so that I could create some of the things that we're going to see, and I'll explain a little bit to you in a minute. But one of the things about this right here, You see these folds that's in the shirt. Those are from gravity falling of when he was as he was falling to the ground, he hit, and the shirt wrinkles up, and it creates these gentle folds that you can see here. They're all uniform. They're almost straight in line. Just a little gravity fall, little folding. When we get into the slide presentation, I'll show you the fold of the that really is in question of what brought my attention to doing these type of tests. And then we have another one here, and I repeated the process to make sure that these folds are consistent and that you can create them again and again. And I did it numerous times. And so you can see each of them are gentle and they have an upward flow and they have a certain type of fold pattern to them. And which is, like I said, as we go further, you'll understand more and more about this video. Now, this one here, I created from lifting so that you can see that if you lift the individual, that the clothing slides up the body and it creates a much deeper fold of the clothing, which will happen. I've done it, with thousands of arrests and confrontations and searches and things, that whenever you're searching people, you'll see these folds, and it's plus working crime scenes when you see victims that you're taking in, and what mechanics did it take to create anything within that photograph involving that victim. And so even if it's not linked to this case, as you look at other cases and you're looking at these photographs, take in mind that everything that happens to that victim, if there's some type of force that takes to even move a piece of clothing, any type of materials, you have to figure out what type of mechanics that did that, and how was that happened in a photograph. And so this is what I did here, and I wanted to create, whereas you would have, and you'll see here in just a second, this is a much deeper offset fold than what those gentle, uniform, almost system medical folds that you could see, that there was some type of uh, symmetry, or how you say that?
Symmetry?
Symmetry is the word I'm searching for. One of those words in my mind I can't get out. But the symmetry of the other folds that was just from the falling and gravity is a little bit different from this contact, because the folds are deeper and they're much more out of a line, and it's from that physical contact. And this is the important part of looking at the crime scene photos and trying to identify if there's any type of contact that wouldn't have happened simply from just falling, that it would to physical contact. And Mrs. Steve helps me with my words sometimes, has to. All right. Then I did one with this situation here of simulating that you would remove someone that from a seat of a car that's upright, and place them on the roadway. Once again, having that physical contact, having those deeper folds, as you can see here, and even with the placement of being on the ground. And then, of course, when we get in the slide presentation, you'll see more of what these folds are. You don't have the uniform. And then I went and did the drag folds of, whereas if you took a body and you drug it on a surface, and an interesting fact that you'll see here is that the folds that are created in this are the opposite of the folds that are either by gravity or by physical contact. These folds, when you're dragging, they are the reverse C. If you took the gravity folds and the lifting of the clothing, as you lift it up, it creates a backward C fold. When you drag a individual, the clothing on top creates a C opening. The opening is to the right. Gravity and sliding up is reversed, it's to the left on the clothing. And that's why I wanted to do this testing, because when I saw that first one, I knew that, oh, that's reversed clothing fold, and that's either, could it been from a fall, or is it from a actual contact? And because, like I said, if you can show that a human hand had any contact with his clothing that's not linked to law enforcement in any manner, then of course we have absolutely, there's no ifs, ands, or buts argument about it being some type of motor vehicle. But the dragging and the sliding, it creates a reverse. And I have some better pictures than this. This is just what blow-ups from the camera. And I repeated it numerous times, so I don't have the. I didn't think y'all want to be bored by watching 10 minutes of of just watching me drag somebody. But you can go ahead and take that off. And now,
Are you gonna come back on?
yeah, I'm gonna come back on. You can go to the slideshow.
Okay. All right.
Let me see. How do I get my camera started back? Here it is. All right. Of course, like I said, we're talking about the Stephen Smith case and the handling of and the possibility of if there was actual physical contact with his clothing at the scene of where his body was located during this investigation. And this is the clothing articles that was noted in the autopsy report. And I'm going to take just a brief moment as we discuss this, that the pathologist, as they started the autopsy, that of a well-developed, well-nourished teenage white male who weighs approximately 152 pounds, 69.5 inches in length, and appears compatible with his stated age of 19 years. And the body has been identified by the coroner. The body is clad in khaki shorts, a black sneaker on the left foot, matching white sneaker accompanies the body, probably fell off, and a black Nike t-shirt. Now, they do not mention any type of underwear. And is that the reason that specialized kit was done? Was it something that they noted and they expected to find? And as you look in the picture of where his hips are, that and this exposure of his lower stomach and hip area, you don't see any type of underwear. And would that lead an investigator or a pathologist to say, oh, this is unusual for whatever reason, and decided to do that type of kit? Did that play a part in it? And did they contact any of the family and asked, do you normally, or does he normally wear underwear? And if not, then of course that may help explain why that particular kit was performed. And but they just don't make note. Now there may be a report out there somewhere else that has additional clothing articles, but we have his loosely tied shoes, as you can see here. He doesn't have socks. And is that something else that he normally wears? Does he wear socks with his shoes? And we just don't know. Now, the shorts, you're looking at them, they're extremely wrinkled. And we have to take that in consideration of, is that normal? Also, when you look at the interior of a car, you know, he is a little bit disorganized, but is his clothing normally that way? And is it just something, the lighting of the camera or something that is playing tricks on the eye? I mean, they may be well ironed, but here they appear to be slightly wrinkled. But I wanted to cover that. But anyway, this, of course, I've tried to take all the any type of offensive blood flow and things out of it, because that's not the part that we're focusing on tonight. And of course, there's plenty of photos out there if people want to see any of the passive blood flow. You can go find them out there, and we may discuss that. We will be discussing it at some point. But this here is, in just a moment, I'll show you exactly. But you can look up there at the top left photo, and you'll see that fold that caught my eye. This one, that deep overlap of where the lower part of the shirt was forced and folded up under the higher part of his of chest area of his shirt. And that would take some type of mechanical force to slide that up. And that's why I did all the testing I did today to compare and see what type of manipulation of material would cause this fold. Because like I say, if we can put forearms or hands on his body at any point at this scene that's other than law enforcement, we have an individual that was also on the scene with him. because there's no explanation for this type of folding of clothing articles. And it would be something I would consider as working a crime scene. And that it's unnatural. And this isn't something, when you wear your shirt, naturally, of course, it's going to be all the way down over your hips. He was an individual, small stature. And so this is the fold that caught my eye and what led me to a couple, 3 hours of testing today. But now if law enforcement steps forth and says that we did this, then of course that's on them. We just don't have the documentation. But I don't see any reason why they would have went that high to create such a fold. Normally, whenever you do searches for keys, billfolds, rolling of the body right to left, looking for billfolds, you do it at the lower reaches of the clothing. You don't go up mid and go into and touch in areas that you can't see. But this is the dummy I created. There's about, I don't know, 60 or 80 pounds inside this chest cavity. Taped it up, put a backing on it, and put a shirt on it that had these lines on it so that you could see those folds and the offsets and everything, rather than just using a plain white shirt or dark shirt. I wanted to give something that had, whereas his folds had that one line on it, so you could see the deep fold and the offset. And like I said, these are just the gravity, very symmetrical gravity folds in the uniform, and they're very, you know, all of them have basically the same depth and uniformity. And I did it, like I said, numbers of times, and you can see how far the shirt went up, and even here where it went slightly higher, but they were all absolutely uniform, and you can see that the lines are actually, they stay pretty well in line. Now this physical contact with the deep folds, and I did it twice on it. I did once from the table, and then I did it once from the chair, and then I did the drag folds, and the drag folds, and this is where you can see that the folds are in the opposite direction. All I did was, as you saw in the video, with that rope, drag that body across the surface, and it bunches the shirt up, and it creates folds upward in the normal C opening pattern versus what the gravity folds would create and what the physical contact folds would be. I doubt that this is pretty much like something you would learn in school that you probably won't ever use, other than if you look at pictures of crime scenes and you look at manipulations of bodies and their clothing. Then, of course, this is the only time that those points might interest you. And here's the physical contact. You can see, whereas there is a lot of offsetting of the linear of the lines, and you have those deeper folds that come up under. And that's the importance of looking at this and seeing the two different types of, and you can see that this is the reverse C fold for the physical contact. And then you have them here side by side. Whereas you can see the Stephen Smith fold that's offset deep, and along with the ones that I did with my control test to demonstrate how this does and can occur. And with that being said, that pretty much is all that we have on this. And but like I said, I wanted to do this with the understanding that law enforcement, as they work these crime scenes, there's a lot more to it than just taking a picture, looking at the blood pattern analysis, and you also look at all articles. And why is it important of why you would want to identify what parts of the clothing? If the individual has been redressed, and as we go back to this, if this individual was actually had been the victim of some type of contact or assault by individual, touch DNA would be extremely important now, and you would need to know what parts of his clothing was touched, and where could those touch. Of course, the snaps on zippers on pants, snaps on pants, the waistline, the shoes, putting on the shoes, base of the shoes, whatever, and also the shirt. And even if there wasn't any type of a physical assault, but if someone was actually picked up, lifted, dragged, you would want to know what part of those clothing articles touched the offender. And are you fortunate enough that he would have been bare armed or hands? And you might get some type of touch DNA, cell transfer, hairs from his, there's so many things that whenever we make contact, even in the movement of a victim, that it's extremely critical that we are able to identify certain things that may have happened to that victim and look at those areas and do tape lifts, whatever it takes, submit the article of clothing and, in your request of lab work, uh, make it absolutely clear that there were certain types of or certain parts of that clothing that you suspect may have been um, um, had contact with the offender, and which can play a huge thing in modern technology. 30, 40 years ago, no, it wouldn't have played a real big thing unless you develop DNA and the science continues to grow and progress to the point of where it is now and what it will be in the future. Because we've not even started on where science will take crime scene investigations. We're somewhere, knocking on the door of what will the future be, which will be absolutely exciting for the CSIs of the future. And I hope I get to see some of that as I age. But anyway, we'll have any questions, we'll answer them.
All right. Okay. Let's see here. First one is going to be a blue light special
Thank you.
for Adventurous Spirit 66.
Mr. Steve, thank you for breaking this down so the average person can understand this. Mrs. Steve, you're doing a great job as usual. She does. Absolutely. We wouldn't be where we're at today without her.
Right.
And thank you for your support.
You just won't let me get promoted.
No, she wants to do admin. She doesn't think that she serves as great a service as I keep telling her, and as y'all keep telling her. We can't do without Mrs. Steve.
I can do the back office.
Nope.
Okay. And this is from Miranda at True Crime Web. I saw a crime scene photo of SS that was released by HBO. What are the two round red stains near the base of his feet? If blood, why would they be that shape? And you have two of those. That one from Miranda, and then somebody else.
It's probably sort of like you've seen where in some of the old crime scenes that they take the old chalk and they paint the around. In this case, they draw the box around him. But also, they were probably just a painting from spray can paint to mark the heels and the toes to get the original where those shoes and feet were prior to rolling him over, right or left. And they would have done that prior to doing that. So they'd have the exact ones with the photographs supporting how the body was originally. And so that's probably what those are.
Okay, let's see here. 24. Okay. And let's single mom of 4. Did his ankle get broken because the one looks broken?
I have no idea, but that will be answered absolutely positively on the next autopsy because they'll check from head to toe and find exactly everything. And I know that there is a severe angle, but we don't know from that angle is the foot also twisted inside the shoe, and because the shoes are not tightly on his feet. I don't even know if the left shoe in this photograph is tied at all, and the tongue is extremely exposed.
All right, and bear with me because I just deleted one, or didn't delete it. I just moved it, and I didn't mean to. So hold on one second. Somebody had typed in here the question of two-man carry.
Yes.
Asking if this was from a two-man carry, and I'm going back to see if I can find it.
And
Here it is.
okay.
Perfect. Erica.
Yes.
Two-man carry.
I have considered that on several occasions because of the positioning of the knees, and it's not a bad thought. And when you put that in with the deep fold of the shirt, it is possible. Um, and but you know that would just be something they would consider. And once again, knowing that that is possible, what type of processing would they do um, at this time period 8 years ago? Would they have went to those areas of the bodies and did swabs to see if they could get any type of skin cell transfers, hairs? There's so many things, and I just don't know what they did with a pathologist at that time.
Okay. And Betty, carried and placed due to the fold, but where's the footprints or blood trail from the carry?
And that's the thing that we have to look at. Was the at the moment, if he is placed here, because there's two things that can happen, and there is a tremendous amount of passive blood flow at this location. And that's one of the reasons I want to get over there to see what the landscape is and what the angles are and the fall is, so I can determine, is that just bleed out from the victim, a passive blood flow. And but if a victim is upright and has sustained injury and being transported, of course, if the heart is not pumping and he's already deceased, there will not be any additional blood flow until gravity takes over. And that will be something that I have to get there and see if that's part of this that could have occurred. But then again, we also have to look at that if these folds are supported by the terrain, which I won't know until next week. Um, and I'll be able to make a little bit better guesstimate on that, or once I see the lay of the land. That, like I said, if he's upright, all the blood is below the two open, or yes, the penetrating, almost similar to a gunshot wound, and the 7.5 inch laceration, and whatever other injuries or lacerations he may have sustained at the scene. I don't know. So we'll just have to see.
Okay.
Yeah, if they just pulled him out of a front seat and moved him a foot or two upright and just laid him there in the middle of the road, yeah, there wouldn't be much of a blood trail.
All right. So you promised Jennifer Rochelle that I would sing Happy Birthday to Reed?
No, I said that I would remind you, and I did tell you it was her Reed's birthday, and I didn't promise that you would sing. I said I would ask you to sing Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
I told her I don't have a lick of a tune in me.
Yeah, like I do. I have less than a lick of a tune.
Happy birthday, Reed. It's your birthday again.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Reed.
That's the best you get.
That's it.
We are not blessed with any type of singing vocals.
No. All right. And from Lane, if he was hit by a car, shouldn't there be more blood near his midsection rather than his head?
Well, there would be more injuries, legs, extremities, hips, ribs. Yes, they would be far more lower injuries than what was noted. The absence of, and that was one of the things that the state troopers in South Carolina have always held, that they didn't believe, because there was nothing supporting a traffic accident.
And Kowalski? Yeah, but if Stephen was hit by a car, wouldn't he travel a distance in the air, land, and the inertia would drag him on the pavement, moving his shirt up?
And that's why I did. This. This is when the body inertia is dragged. They're a reverse C. Without this information here, yes, I couldn't argue that that would be. But if the inertia drags your body, the folds are in the opposite direction than what um, we see here. So you see where the folds are um, uh, lapping downward towards the waist. And when you have the drag, folds are lapping up towards your chin. And so the inertia of being drug with the shirt being hiked rules that out. And of course, this is my test. I mean, you may be able to conduct another test that has different results, but these are three different drags, and every one of the drags created the same fold pattern. And the only pattern, let me see where I'm at here. The only pattern that created the folds going down towards the hips was either the lift or just falling straight back with no drag or inertia. Good question. And but that's exactly the reason I did this test and these controls.
All right. And red shift, do you find the angle of his right foot ankle odd?
Well, like I said, the movement of the body by law enforcement at some point on scene, because we have photographs of the legs at one point being to his right side, and later they rotated him to his left side or vice versa. I don't know which one photograph was first. And so during those movements, did the foot come partially out of the shoe, and it just rotated, and from that angle we don't have a real good view. But yes, it is odd, and it does look like, but it doesn't mean that it is broken.
Okay. Trying to keep up.
But Kowalski, you're exactly right. Me and you are on the same page. That's how come I did these controls to demonstrate those two different fold patterns.
Kowalski's next.
Excellent.
All right. What if he was pushed out of a car? The body might roll before coming to a stop, moving the shirt up.
I will try to duplicate that and see what that is. But we don't have any road rash. We don't, we have something mentioned about one arm. It has some contusions, but we don't have the road rash of a moving vehicle. I mean, but and that's one of the reasons I didn't do that. I just did the gravity fall because we're limited really just on the head injuries and some contusions on and a partially dislocated shoulder. We don't have any high speed rolling of as people that tumble, and I've seen it that when people get hit by cars or even fall out of cars or plane crashes, plane crashes especially, that when that mass hits and it starts rolling your body, and as you roll, your arms are thrown out, and all different types of injuries occur, different types of abrasions occur, and there was none noted in the autopsy. So, without any type of supporting evidence, you can speculate across the board, and I just don't know the answers, but we have to have supporting evidence that he was thrown out of the moving car, and the state troopers handling the case, they would have been aware of that, and they would have looked for that, and they would have noted those injuries. And we don't have any reports I know of supporting anybody. It's always been said either it happened there, the homicide either happened there, or he was deposited there. and that's why I did this test to see if he was deposited there or if there was some type of interaction with another human on him. And the best I can tell with the clothing, there is a great possibility of that occurring.
All right. And Molly, are the top R and bottom L photos mirror imaged, one flipped left to right, because it looks like the strange angle switches legs?
And I thought the same until you see when there's at some point they're over the yellow line. And so, I don't think I got a
I
good
don't think
picture.
you put that in
I
there.
don't think I put it in here. Mrs. Steve and I looked at those last night, and
today.
in here you can see where his right leg and hip is over the yellow line. If you look through just above his stomach area, you see that when he's rode to the right, that's where it is. And then, do I have the other one? I know it. But there's another picture somewhere's in here of where there it is, just under the one on there, and you don't see the yellow line to the left side.
All right. And Monique, question. I thought I heard someone said he was moved in order to take crime scene photos.
And I looked at that, and part of the blood pattern analysis is that the head is in the same position of where the passive blood flow is. Now, the movement of shifting his hips right to left, obviously it did occur, and they found the keys in his right pocket. Did they check his other side, whichever side he was on first, and movement? Was it just from taking the knees and rotating the lower part of his body? But the blood pattern at his head seems to be consistent with the passive blood flow and gathering of where you would expect the pooling of blood to be at the head injury. So he wasn't moved right up or down, but his lower body most definitely was rotated. But it doesn't appear that his head was moved from the original pool of blood. I just didn't show that because I don't want to get whatever penalties that YouTube would impose upon me.
All right. And Miranda at True Crime Web, would there be that much blood if he was hit by a car?
Whatever the content of the body and whatever gravity allows to come out, and it appears that he lost a great amount. If all that is true and I always have to, because when you get in these images, where are they coming from and have they been manipulated at all? I have no idea. And what the sources are and what has happened to them. And other, and so we just have to make our best guesses sometimes. But yes, wherever the contents of the body appears that he lost a massive amount of blood there at the scene.
And Elaine, how could this young man's death not be investigated? It seems very suspicious to me. Such a tragedy.
And I understand your point. It was investigated. It just was investigated by the one agency that didn't have homicide investigators. They had reconstructionists, experts. That's what they do. They reconstruct accidents, and I'm sure they're overqualified to do that. But they were the whole time for 8 years, and always claim the same thing. This is not a traffic accident. It's a homicide. And they were agreed with the Sandy Smith, the mother. And finally now SLED has gotten on board and said, yes, it's a homicide. And hopefully the new autopsies and everything will bring more light to this case.
Okay. All right. Now I got to go back and find something. Shoot. Oh, here we go. All right. Blue light.
Oh, Mike D says $5. Great research. My mom retired from the Cobb County SO. She watches too. We'll tell your mom thank you for her service, and if she ever has anything that she ever want to talk to another old cop, just send me an email.
All right, and let's see, Elaine James. Okay, and from Ann Broom, Mr. Steve, do you keep something like a lab notebook to record the results and findings from all of these great tests you've been doing? Ballistics, footprint, body placement, analysis, etc.
Not really. Of course, I have all my photography, and it's a work in and of itself. So I have thousands of pictures, and I just don't have the notations for them of what they are. But that is, I probably do need to take more notes about some of the of the stuff that I would have done on actual crime scenes. But when I'm out here creating a lot of these tests and trying to see and verify what my mind tells me that is suspicious, and try to have an explanation for them. I don't take a lot of notes because it would extend my days into weeks. So there's a fine line there, but I do have it all documented through photography and YouTube now. So y'all are part of my working journal. Kamala Norris, $10. Please, blue light special, please, Mrs. Steve. Thank y'all for all the hard work. I hope South Carolina has a Waffle House for you and Mr. Steve Godspeed. Thank you. Appreciate that. Means a lot to us.
We enjoyed Waffle House last night.
Yes. Where's my?
Oh, it's back there.
For those of you that missed the Morning Watch show, I took Mrs. Steve out to the Waffle House last night, and they were gracious enough there to give me a Waffle House coffee cup. So on our Morning Watch show, we always start off with true crime, and we wind up somewhere in the menu of Waffle House.
Oh my God! In the menu?
Yes, people wanting hash browns,
smothered, covered in chunks.
Yes, she knows what I like.
Yep. All right, let's see here. All right, we did this, Ann. All right, now we've got DZ question. Do you know where the paint chips were located on his clothes? Shirt, shorts, front, or back?
No, it just says clothing from what I've read. Now, there may be a further report that I haven't seen yet that tells you exactly where it could have been and what they were from, as far as where they collected them from and how they collected them, because there's a lot of different ways that you can collect these chips, and how they found them was absolutely amazing. So I would love to see some of those lab reports, but I don't know. It just said clothing, and he only has 4 pieces of clothing. He has a shirt, shorts, and 2 shoes.
Okay. And Chevy Metal 69. Steve, do you know which way the folds are going, either away or towards his car?
Well, he's 3 miles away from his vehicle at this time. When I get there, I'll look at the road and I'll be able to answer you which way his feet were. I'm sure it's in some of the reports, and it's probably some of the photography. I just hadn't. I only started looking at this, his actual crime scenes, in the last 3 days. Like I said, I have a great community that sends me stuff constantly, and thank every one of you for doing that. And I appreciate it so much. It means a lot.
And Mrs. Lady G question: what was the injury above the eye?
Well, they said that there was a laceration or split of the skin for 7.5 inches or thereabouts. And plus, there was some type of injury that the deputy coroner and a law enforcement officer thought was a gunshot wound entry. And of course, SLED agents, when they arrived, they said it wasn't. but that the other side, of course, said yes, I believe it is, and so they handled it as such. And what was that type of injury above the eye? There's a lot of speculation out there of what it is and what could have caused it. I don't know yet. I wish I had the pictures. I really do.
All right. And Juicy B, is there a chance he was actually dropped from a vehicle? Also, his body in these photos look as though he was rolled over.
Um, yes, the lower extremities rolled from right to left or left to right. Absolutely. Dropped from a vehicle. Is that possible that he was in a vehicle and they either took him out of a upright sitting, or was he in the back of a vehicle and out of the back of a truck or something? All of that is possible, and we just don't know until we, um, you know, get more information. Yeah, he was rolled right to left or left to right on lower extremities for sure.
Okay. And Kathy, for him to bleed out that much there, does that mean his heart was still beating for a period of time?
Well, if for the blood flow, if his heart was still beating for a period of time, and as much blood is there, and I don't know what the quantity of blood actually was at the scene. I mean, you see the blood flow and it's extensive. Um, it can either be from a heart beating, or it can be gravity. If the injuries are severe enough and the slope is enough that his head is downhill, blood will flow to the whatever injury, create that passive blood flow, and it could be either or. Um, and I'll have a little bit better understanding when, like I said, when I get boots on the ground, and may be able to answer that question.
All right. And from Jill, Steve, this information is so important. Do you think all investigators will look for this clothing evidence, the wrinkle patterns, etc.? I hope you can reach out to Eric Bland and share this.
I don't know. And like I said, law enforcement may say, "Oh, we did this," and they may have. And if so, of course, everything I spoke about tonight is not for this case, but it's always important for all other cases also. And that's the reason that when I was looking at it, I had to qualify that, yes, I understand that there was some manipulation between some of the photographs by law enforcement, but uh, as far as the shirt pattern, I didn't, and seeing where his head was still in that pool of blood, and knowing that he hasn't been moved, um, as I would say, north or south from where his head contact in the passive pool of blood was, that it was still is uh, in that pool. That this here was just something that stuck out to me, um, and would other officers pay attention to it, or do they already know the answer to it? I don't know. I hope so. Um, but no, I haven't reached out to Eric. I think someone mentioned that during the Murdoch case that uh, they had heard that he was speaking of Chris's show and some of the content that we had done. And I don't know if that's true or not, but someone mentioned that and um, sent me an email, and Chris also um, some information about that they were aware of some of our Murdoch control testing.
All right. And Anne, Mr. Steve, it just seems like he was hit by a vehicle, even if just sideswiped. The victim would have a lot more injuries, bruises, scratches, broken bones, etc., especially if dragged.
And you are correct, and that's how come the state troopers who work and they have that specialized team that work traffic accidents, and there's no debris, and they look for it and they didn't find it, and they said it's not a traffic accident. So you are absolutely correct that um, that if it was such, they would have found something.
Okay. 49. And Miranda at True Crime Web, how do we know it wasn't a, can I say that?
Yes.
Gunshot wound with that much blood and brain matter?
Well, the pathologist says she did x-rays and there was not a projectile inside the cranial vault. Um, and, um, and also there's also other telltale signs of any time a gunshot enters the body, um, that it, that, that bullet will start shedding material, and that material often will show up on a, um, x-ray, and they didn't note any of that, and they didn't find a bullet. Now, if they find a bullet on this next autopsy, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do. I'm not saying they will, but they will be looking for that, just in case there was something missed.
And Molly, how long was he in the road, or did the ME think he was deceased before the body was found?
I don't know. It could have been up. Law enforcement put a time frame on this, I think between 1 and 4. So that allows up to 3 hours in the road. And being night, and of course, at what stage was the blood when found? That would be critical to see if there's any type. There's certain things that happens in blood as it is exposed to air and the separation and drying. And I don't have that information. The investigators on scene would be able to look at that and look at that blood and tell you at what stages of separation and drying it was, and might come along with most certainly it could test it to recreate the same situation and come up with a very narrow time frame.
All right. And Mrs. Lady G, do they have the BF phone records?
I know that's been disputed by the family, that some of the family says they don't know about this so-called one individual, but there may be multiple boyfriends. I don't know. But if the troopers didn't have them, I'm sure that SLED will have them coming up soon.
All right. And Erna, I think you've already answered this. Was there an estimated time of death in the autopsy?
Oh, I didn't even look at that on the autopsy. It would be on the death certificate, but I haven't seen that death certificate, and I don't know if there was a time in the autopsy. I didn't look for that part of it. Good question.
Okay. And Elaine, what was this young man's death ruled as?
I think they ruled it as undetermined, I believe.
Okay. And Lady Butterfly, I went back to the beginning. Could someone have put those clothes on him, forgot the underwear? Looks to me like someone dressed him, then dumped him.
And I believe that there's some officers that will probably absolutely agree with you, because even one of the ones that was in a recent news interview made that content, or made that comment rather, that he believed either happened there or he was dumped there, and that was a homicide. That wasn't a traffic accident. It was either the homicide occurred there or he was dumped there, and so he would agree with you.
All right. And from Lane, in your opinion, do the photos point to his body being dumped at all? I thought there'd be a blood trail or something. This crime scene confuses me.
All crime scenes confuse me. And you have to get there, and there is always confusion, and there's so much to explain in a crime scene. Looking for different blood spatter analysis, blood pattern analysis, the clothing, what type of injuries, is there any road rash from being dragged or falling, is his knees or any other areas have any type of injuries of indicative of some type of struggle, or signs of trying to get back to his feet, and we don't have any of that. Um, and the mother noted in her letter to the FBI that there was no blood spatter seen at the scene. And understanding blood spatter is one thing that for blood spatter, as far as cast off and some of the low velocity and high velocity blood patterns to occur, you have to have at least 2 strikes to create some of the blood spatter to be analyzed. First, normally when the first strike hits the head and there's any type of laceration, that you'll strike and your whatever weapon you're using will come off of the head, because the head goes one way and you'll draw back the weapon, and the weapon has a minimum amount of blood on it from that very initial contact and short time span of impact. Now, when you re-strike a second later or 2 seconds later, now you're striking into a area. If you hit the same area or same general area, it depends on how large that laceration is, that if you hit in that area, then you'll have the low velocity and the mid velocity blood spatters that can occur, plus the cast off, because now you're striking into an open wound. And so that's how come they have this +1 rule, that if you ever see, and sometimes at crime scenes, you can count every time the whatever weapon being used, every time it comes back and every time it comes forward, you'll have that cast off. And so you can count the patterns, and then you add 1 for the fact that that first one didn't have any cast off. And so you always add 1 strike to every identifiable cast off pattern that you find.
You done?
Mhm.
All right. Let's see here. Annie Lane. If he was hit by a vehicle, wouldn't he have been knocked out of his shoes?
Yes, and that was noted and has been noted by a lot of people that work traffic accidents, and a lot of the experts on a lot of YouTube channels have all stated that, and it's true that you would have that ability of seeing that these loose fitting shoes wouldn't have been on his person.
And Juicy B, do you think his head injury was created by the pavement and not an object?
It is possible that if that is a single strike injury to that one location, and he absolutely is not flat, could another skull fracture and injury to the brainstem occur from striking the pavement? Absolutely, it's possible. Now, were there additional blows? I don't know. I haven't seen the photographs, and I really need to see those.
And Isla, question: have you encountered coroners who clearly shouldn't be in the profession, like people making wild calls that seem like the coroner doesn't have the skills?
Not in my career, no. In my career, I only dealt with 2 or 3 coroners, and all of them were extremely knowledgeable and professional.
Right. And Miranda, at True Crime Scene, did SS try to call anyone for help after he ran out of gas? I don't understand why he would walk if he had a working phone.
I
I
think,
think I said that
yeah,
too.
yes, she did. There was someone that mentioned they had spoken to him in the early morning hours, and has that been corroborated? Any supporting evidence to that? I don't know. And why he didn't, I have no idea. I know in the Murdoch, they said that the cell phone towers out there, it was sketchy at best. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to find out. But that, once again, whatever I find out about cell phone technology now will probably be different. We're 8 years later.
All right. And John, did Sandy personally give permission for these photos to be publicly released?
I don't know how they got released and who got them, and that's how come I only have partials, and I don't think that anyone ever how they got leaked. They got leaked, and I don't have any idea how that occurred.
And from Morgan, Stephen, I always thought we wouldn't have access to photos and info like this, especially chat channels talking about it when the case is coming up. Won't the jury be influenced by you slash the public?
Um, the jury panel that will be selected won't be influenced by any of us. There's enough people out there, you know. I could probably look on the my YouTube channel and tell you exactly how many people in South Carolina looks at my YouTube channel, and but they will find people that are unaware of it. So um, no matter how broad the um, and how much information is released. The YouTube is the least of the worries. It's these because you can look at the major news networks, and they have far more viewers than the YouTube channels, and they talk about these photographs and everything. Um, and until you can close all the news networks that do and put this stuff out there, then and they're still able to have juries selected. So if all the major news networks can't cloud a um, a jury pool, um, the YouTube channels I don't think would either.
And from Mitzi, Mr. Steve, are you retiring the old coffee cup now?
Only on morning watch.
All right. And John, was Stephen's face disfigured or was the injuries just in the scalp region?
I have heard both ways. I don't know. Like I said, everything I've seen has been blurred and blotted out, and I went and I blurred and blotted out more because, like I said, there's certain parts that I won't show.
And Molly at True Crime Web, do you think he was moved because EMS was trying to do some type of life saving? I have heard EMS will try to resuscitate even if no signs of life nowadays.
I don't know, and like I said, I know the head position is still within the pool, and they marked the feet, and I know there was some lower movements, but would they have checked? I would assume so.
And Monique, how likely is a perpetrator's left-handed? Many marks on right side.
I don't know, and I don't know how many blows they are that was substantiated, and um, and and that's something else you would have to see the actual injury that it might show you from what actual direction it came in from.
All right. And Deb, couldn't the impact cause that flow?
It could cause the laceration and a serious enough injury that would open up. Um, and is it one impact, two impacts, three impacts? Don't know.
And JDR, Mr. Steve, was there any insect activity on the body? What effect would the air temperature have on bleeding in a living or dead body?
Um, there was a study, I think, that they at the Body Farm, the old thing. I may have this number off by a few minutes, but after death, I think the first human fly finds you within 5 minutes. I know it's within 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, um, in certain environments. And so, would there have been insect activity on the body? Probably so, but it would have been extremely minor. Um, that insect activity really doesn't show up unless you're not discovered for several days and weeks. Uh, but the air temp for this time of year and being at night, it would have been minimum.
And Molly, is Levidity reported in the ME report for what position he was most likely left in originally?
And they will have checked for that. And of course, lividity, rigor mortis, all of that gives you just as stomach contents of what did we have to eat, when did we have it, and there's so many things that can give you a certain time frame. Now, will it get closer than what this 1 to 4 o'clock window is, 3 hours? That's pretty narrow, and I don't know. Um, within that 3 hours, probably not a lot of indicators that will narrow it down much more than that.
And Sean, could it be possible he was hit in the head by a truck mirror as a truck was passing him walking down the road? Then he staggered out to the middle of the road.
And that's what law enforcement would have considered, and they would have looked at that. Um, and they said there was no debris, and there's a lot to be said for that. And if it was a mirror, it would have broken it, I would imagine, um, unless there's just some other obstacle sticking out of a car that could create this and spin him out there. I mean, like I said, um, and that's how come I I did these tests and was trying to explain what type of mechanics would have folded this shirt. Because if there is human interaction, then of course we don't have any type of mirror or metal or anything. There is a person eye to eye with him at some point to have the interactions of creating these folds. But like I said, I don't know if law enforcement or someone else created some type of uh, mechanics to create this fold. Just don't know.
And Deb, who all was present during autopsy?
I think it was just maybe the sled and maybe the county sheriff's office rep and possibly the pathologist. And it may have not even been the sheriff's office. It may have just been two sled. But I know at least one sled was there, I think.
And Erica, will you be visiting Bobcat Landing on your trip?
Thinking about it, I probably will. It's another 30 minutes from where his car was. I think somewhere around there, 20 or 30 minutes. So probably so.
All right, let's see here. All right, and Juicy B, he was actually found very early in the morning, but when did the police actually get to the crime scene? The caller called very early.
I think and I'm doing this off the top of my head. It was like 3:50 something that the caller came, and the first officer that was dispatched was there within minutes, um, and which was surprising to the family uh, because the mother addressed that issue in her letter to the FBI that the narrow time frame from when the caller said, "Hey, there's a individual in the road that might get hit," to the point that we're looking at. Um, Law enforcement arriving, and she made note of that.
And from Lee, how hard is it going to be if they do find DNA? Is it going to be hard to match it with any suspects after this length of time?
Modern technology and what they're doing now with all these people that research this genetic stuff and finding this family lineage, um, and where are we going to be at in the next year or two? No, I don't think. If you have a DNA profile, you're going to find the offender or a relative.
All right, you are done.
Well, guys, I appreciate everybody being here tonight, and we'll have probably a short show Saturday because I've got some packing to do and get all my notes taken and everything I want to do when I go over to South Carolina. And with that being said, so we'll have a show Saturday night, might be short, and then Sunday members only. I won't be because I'll be on the road. And if I put in an extra long day, I may not be here for the morning watch Sunday night, Monday morning. But I want to thank everybody that has donated, that's watched. If you like this video, sub, share, give it a thumbs up. And we appreciate your support in so many ways because it allows us to go out and do things and bring attention to these cases. But we thank y'all, and y'all stay safe out there.
Love y'all. You're the best. Thanks, mods.